I love seafood. This love has inspired me to learn more about cooking seafood at home. And one of my favorite dishes of all time is steamed clams. Because the combination of perfectly cooked clams in a buttery white wine and garlic broth is an old school classic that is utterly divine. I'm Hani Maroof, and today I'm gonna show you my favorite recipe for making the most amazing clams in white wine and butter broth for you to have fun cooking, enjoy, and share with your family and best friends. If you have friends coming over to your place and you would like to impress them with a hearty meal that you can share together, look no further than this amazing clams with white wine and butter broth recipe. Use 1¼ kilogram of fresh clams, 1 stick or 113 gram of unsalted butter, 1 cup of good quality white wine, 2 grams salt, quarter teaspoon of ground black pepper, 25 gram of fresh parsley, 25 gram of fresh cilantro, a juice of 1 lemon, 2 red chili peppers, and 3 cloves of garlic. If you like the broth to have some bitterness to it, use half a lime. Adding lime is optional, and if you don't like bitterness or if you are trying this clams recipe for the first time, please do not use lime in the recipe. Now let's talk about how to prepare clams. Buy the clams fresh on the same day you're gonna cook them. Soak the clams for at least 30 minutes on an ice-cold fresh water before cleaning. The water will loosen the sand from the surface of the clams and will make cleaning much easier. Use a brush to scrub the clams shells to remove any sand that is sticking on them. Brushing will clean 99% of the sand, and once you soak the brushed clams in another bowl with clean water, they will be 100% clean. If you happen to find any clam that is broken, it is bad and it's dead and you need to get rid of it immediately. If you find an open clam, this clam could be dead. To check the open clam, press on it with your fingers, and if it closes the shell, the clam is good and can be cooked. If the clam does not react, this means that the clam is dead and you need to get rid of it just as you did with the broken clam. After all clams are cleaned, place them in a clean and cold water until preparation of the other ingredients is done. Use a sharp knife to finely chop the parsley. Slice the chili peppers and leave the seeds in for an extra kick. Slice the garlic cloves but not too thinly. If you slice the garlic too thin, it will burn and will give the broth bitter taste. Chop the cilantro, and if you like bitterness in the broth, cut half a lime into 5 or 6 pieces and add them to the broth. If you don't like a layer of bitterness, or if you're not sure, do not use any lime in the recipe. The lemon juice we're gonna use will add a citrusy flavor that will make this dish taste amazing. Finally, cut the lemon in half so you're ready when it's time to squeeze the lemon. To make the most amazing clams with white wine and butter broth, we need to create the broth first and then cook the clams in the broth. This order will give the broth and the clams the most amazing taste ever. Use a large saucepan and on medium to high heat, melt the butter just for a few seconds. Add the garlic and mix to release the amazing flavor of the garlic into the butter. Add the sliced red chili peppers and mix. This red chili peppers will add an incredible flavor and heat to the broth. If you don't have fresh red chili peppers, use 1 to 3 teaspoons of chili flakes and the clam broth will be as good. Now we're gonna build flavors on top of each other using spices to create an amazing broth. So add the salt and the ground black pepper. Add the lemon juice to give the broth citrusy flavor, and finally add 1 cup of white wine. As I mentioned before, you can't use bad quality wine in this recipe. I tried to make this recipe with low quality wine and the result was not good. So please use a good quality wine because the wine is key in this recipe. For an extra layer of bitterness, you can use half a lime. But if you don't like bitterness in your food, do not use any lime. This ingredient is optional for those whose culture appreciate notes of bitterness. Now, add all the clams and mix with the broth to incorporate the flavors of the broth with the taste of the clams. Lower the heat, close the lid and let the clams cook for about 20 to 30 minutes. If you have a glass lid like mine, you can also enjoy watching the clams open as they cook. If a clam does not open, this means that this clam is bad and you should get rid of it. If you don't have a glass lid, watch this beautiful scene here with me. This is very interesting and fun to watch, especially for kids. If you have kids and you let them watch the clams open their shells live, they will be curious to taste and eat these little clams. But if you're gonna make these clams for your kids, you will have to remove the red chili peppers and probably the white wine. After end of the cooking time, open the lid away from you for your safety and check that all clams have opened their shells. If you find any clam that's not open, get rid of it immediately. Finally, turn off the heat Add the parsley and cilantro to the clams and give everything a quick mix. The freshness of parsley and cilantro will take the taste of the butter and white wine broth with the clams to a whole new level. When making this recipe, always add the fresh parsley and cilantro at the end of the cooking process so they don't lose their fresh taste. Also, this meal needs to be cooked just before serving. If you're gonna cook it and leave it for some time, the clams will get chewy and the parsley and cilantro will lose their vibrant green color and fresh taste. Once all ingredients are mixed, your clam with white wine and butter broth should be ready to serve. If you were here as I am making this recipe, you would be surprised with how the flavor from the butter combined with the red chili pepper and the garlic, then the lemon and white wine created this incredible broth. But when you add the salty sea flavor from the clams on top of everything with incredible freshness from the parsley and cilantro, the whole thing becomes like a symphony of beautiful smells and flavors in your kitchen. To serve this hearty recipe, get your favorite serving bowl and fill it to the top with these delicious clams and then scoop the broth on top of them. Add a slice or two of an artisan bread and you will have the most amazing clams with white wine and butter broth ever made. Now, we are at my favorite part of the episode where I get to enjoy this amazing meal and share my experience with you. When I'm alone, I always like to pick the clams, dip them in the broth and then dip the bread in the broth and eat everything together. But because I'm on TV and dripping would not be funny, I will pick one clam with the tip of my fork and use a spoon to enjoy the broth. The clams are well cooked and taste like the ocean. And the broth has a combination of buttery, citrusy, garlicky flavors with just the right amount of heat that makes this recipe one of my favorite recipes of all time. And if you try it yourself, you will know that this meal is fit for a king. If you are a seafood lover, please try this recipe and tell me in the comments below, would you prefer a layer of heat and bitterness from the lime in the broth, or you prefer your clams to have a kick of heat and buttery flavor without any bitterness? I hope you like this episode. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bon appétit!